So do you remember in the movie Scream? The very beginning, the first Scream ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Drew Barrymore.
Yes.
And she's in the house. And it's the killer calls her.
Right.
And he's like, do you like scary movies?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I like scary movies. And he's like, all right, well, let's test you. And the killer goes, okay, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? And she goes, Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Like without skipping a beat.
Exactly.
And he's like, wrong. It was Jason Voorhees' mother.
Mrs. Voorhees.
Right.
Yes.
And that makes me think about the topic that we're going to talk about today. The original lineup of a band.
Yeah.
What constitutes the original lineup? We literally just got done watching a video of AC/DC where it was not Bon Scott singing.
And it was not Brian Johnson singing.
No.
It was somebody else.
It was someone else completely. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think the only two original members in this band were Angus and Malcolm.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it makes me think, it's like, okay, well, so that guy, is he the original singer of AC/DC or not? Because you'd say Bon Scott.
Right. That's what everybody would go to. Most people don't even realize that there was a singer before Bon Scott.
Yeah. What constitutes an original lineup?
Chronologically, just the first members. But as we're delving into this, there's a lot more than meets the eye or ear.
All right.
You know? I mean, we heard Can I Sit Next to You, Little Girl.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the one with Bon Scott.
No.
Did it sound like AC/DC to you?
It sounded like an AC/DC tribute band with a singer who couldn't really sing Brian Johnson or Bon Scott.
Yeah, to me it sounded like an engine firing on half its cylinders.
No.
Because we had a bass player and we had a drummer. Neither one of them appeared to be Cliff Williams or Phil Rudd.
No.
And the music, I mean, we heard AC/DC's version of that song with Bon Scott.
Yeah.
But this one is missing something.
Okay, let's talk about Metallica.
Yes, Metallica's a very good choice.
All right, audience out there. Here's a question for you. What's the original lineup of Metallica? And on paper or whatever, Kirk Hammett, James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, Cliff Burton.
Yep.
But Dave Mustaine was in the band before Kirk Hammett.
Before Kirk Hammett.
Ron McGovney was the bass player before Cliff.
Very good.
So which is the original lineup?
Exactly. I think people are willing to forgive and in some cases forget bandmates that have come and gone before other ones. I think they hone in on what's the first formative lineup.
Formative lineup. What do you mean by that?
The ones that stuck with people, the ones that started to put people in seats, the ones that started to sell records. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
You know, the ones that started to get people's attention more so. Obviously with Dave, the original singer of AC/DC, you know, they weren't quite putting butts in the seat like they did with Bon.
Yeah.
Although chronologically he came first. But Bon came better.
Think about the Sex Pistols.
Yeah?
Sid Vicious is not the original bass player.
No.
In fact, the original bass player of the Sex Pistols was way better than Sid.
Mm-hmm. Look at Nirvana. Nirvana went through several drummer lineups.
And they had a second guitar player.
Yeah.
You say who's Nirvana? I mean, it's like, I think Chad was the drummer, I think, but I think, but the second guitar player.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he was in Nirvana. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, supposedly, like, he's on the cover of Bleach.
Yes.
but
That's
actually
right.
doesn't play on
It
it.
doesn't play on the album.
And in fact, Dale Crowder from the Melvins actually plays some of the drums on Bleach. In some ways, actually, Dale Crowder was in the Melvins at one point.
Yeah.
So, or filled in. So it's like, okay, was he a member of the
Yes.
was he a member of the Melvins, or how does that work?
Yes.
Say you have a okay, for example,
Go ahead.
talk about there was a point in time where Brian Johnson had to leave AC/DC.
Yes.
This is more recently.
Yes, very recent.
Axl Rose came in and did a couple sets with them.
Yes.
So was Axl Rose a member of AC/DC?
Yes. Does Axl make Wikipedia now?
Does he?
I don't know. I'm almost tempted to look and find out myself. You know, we talked previously, too, another prime example, the band Rat.
Yep.
At this point, I believe Stephen Pearcy is the only original member of Rat in that band, even though I think there might even be two versions of Rat still at this point, because he was running one camp and then somebody else was
I
running
hate that.
another camp, you know.
Queensryche.
Queensryche was
The same
Jeff
thing.
Tate's Queensryche. They did that for a period of time. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. But yeah, where's the heart and soul of the band?
Let's talk about Van Halen.
Van Halen's another.
You got, David Lee Roth is replaced by Sammy Hagar.
Yes.
Sammy Hagar goes on to record several albums with Van Halen, and by metrics, they sold more albums
Yes.
than the original albums that they did with David Lee Roth. Then it becomes a question of like, okay, well,
And yet there are two very distinctive camps.
is that? But I think as we're looking at it, was that really Van Halen though?
Exactly.
I remember when. I don't remember. I don't remember when, but you had Black Sabbath, and then you had Black with Ozzy,
with Ozzy? Yeah.
and then there was Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio.
Dio.
Is that right to call that? And no, actually, in fact, when you do mob rolls, that's not even Bill Ward playing drums now.
It isn't.
No.
I didn't even remember that, and I had the
The
album.
only two original members by the time you get to that point is Geezer
and
Tony
Tony.
Iommi.
Yeah.
So is that okay to call that Black Sabbath?
I remember there being many different inceptions of Foghat. You know, I mean, Foghat was so fractured that there were several different camps of Foghat for that much.
Shit, there's bands where there's no original members in it anymore.
I've seen that before too. Like, how do you claim ownership of a band that you were never originally part of? Going back to Jimmy Page,
Okay.
Led Zeppelin's original band name was supposed to be the New Yardbirds.
The New
He wasn't even a founding member of the Yardbirds. He was what, third guitarist in line, something like that? He was there whenever they started to dissolve. How do you pick up the baton and try to carry it beyond that? Fortunately, they went with a better name choice.
That brings up another good point. I mean, like, what needs to be there for the band to be the band?
Yeah, is it more than just the legal
Getting back
claim
to
of the identity?
getting back to AC/DC.
Yeah.
AC/DC had several albums that they did with Bon Scott,
Yes.
like a full, discography in and of itself.
Yeah.
Bon Scott dies. They get a new singer,
Yeah.
Brian Johnson, and then wow, they go on to sell their highest selling record of all time, one
Yes.
of the highest selling rock and roll records of all time.
Exactly.
And they continue to go on to this day, I guess.
That album is a monolith. I mean, it's just you
Com-
can't deny it.
Completely different singer than Bon Scott.
Yeah. Admittedly, I'm a member of the Bon Scott camp, but I cannot deny Back in Black.
I love them both. I mean, like, so obviously them losing Bon Scott did not lose what the essence of AC/DC is.
They took a hit.
I mean, to me, like,
was.
getting back to, like, Van Halen,
Yeah.
when they put out 5150, that was a completely different engine. than
Yes.
anything that they put out before then.
I think we saw shades of it in the 1984 album with
Yeah.
Jump as an example,
Yeah.
where Eddie starts to gravitate towards a keyboard a bit more
Yep.
and a more poppy feel. But then 5150 just completely took it in a different, took it, ran the ball and ran off with it.
I definitely think there's power in a name.
Oh yeah,
But I think as, again, like looking back at, like, say, Black Sabbath or Van Halen, or there's like other bands where,
Rainbow, Deep Purple,
oh God, Deep Purple they actually even have in different phases.
absolutely.
And they even admit it.
Well, even Black Sabbath, there was life after Ozzy and Ronnie James Dio,
Yeah, they had Born Again with Ian Gillan, speaking of Deep Purple.
and
And then they continue after that.
yeah,
I mean, there was like a whole other career that Black Sabbath had with, I wish I'd knew
I
the
know.
guy's name.
His name is avoiding me right now.
Several albums.
Yeah,
The interesting thing is, this is Jim Holland,
Hi.
and we're in Pittsburgh, PA, and I lived in Pittsburgh for actually 1 year between 2008 and 2009, and we started a band together. The band was called Trash Magnet. Essentially, we went through a couple different guys to get the lineup that we had,
Yep.
but it was me, you, Dave on bass, and Gary on drums.
Gary on drums.
And essentially, that became the lineup.
Yes.
We wrote some songs together, and we played some shows.
Yep.
And then eventually, I moved back to Seattle,
Yeah.
and then Dave quit the band, and you guys, we were replaced
Right. With another Ray.
with another Ray, and
it was real easy to call out the name on stage.
and then it made me think. Say hypothetically, if you guys got successful, say you guys put out an album, say you guys tour,
Sure.
this is Trash Magnet that the world knows.
I can dream, can't I?
You can dream. So who would be who's the original lineup then?
Yeah.
Is it was the band with me in it?
Because
Or is it a situation where it's like, well, sometimes when you're trying to get a band together, you're going to work through a couple different people to get the lineup that works.
I touched on it earlier. Wikipedia. You take a look at some of the band member listings, previous band members of some of your favorite bands.
Yeah.
You would be really surprised at who was in those bands at one time or another.
I think you answered it kind of at the beginning. And I think this is the answer that I'm going to go with.
What's that?
And I think it really all comes down to the formative lineup. The lineup
That everybody knows.
The
and
lineup
loves.
that everyone knows. I mean, going back to Metallica, Rob has been in Metallica longer than Cliff Burton was.
That's very true.
Very longer. Years longer.
Yeah.
But, I mean, not to discount anything that Rob did with Metallica. And he's an incredible bass player.
Absolutely.
Incredible bass player.
Absolutely.
Though, I hate to say it, but the definitive albums from Metallica are the first ones.
And we both agreed on it too.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the Black Album,
You could,
and that's Jason Newsted.
but you'd be wrong. No, I love Jason Newsted.
It's the same thing with Kiss. I mean, you at a point now where Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer have been in Kiss longer than Ace and Peter.
Yes. I saw a picture of Tommy Thayer on Instagram in Ace Frehley makeup recently.
Yeah.
And I shuddered. I really did. I just, and I had to click not interested.
I think it all comes down to what you said. I think formative years, quintessential album or albums is what makes it.
Sometimes it's a breakthrough album or a breakthrough video.
That's Pantera.
Yeah.
That's Pantera. I mean, like, okay, it's like Pantera puts out Cowboys from Hell. Mm-hmm. And as far as I was concerned, and to the rest of the world, this is Pantera's first album.
Wrong.
Completely wrong. It's actually their fifth album, I think.
Is it that far?
Yeah,
Wow.
like I think there's 3 albums with a singer before Phil,
Yes. That's right.
and then they put out Power
Then they
Metal.
put out Power Metal.
with Phil.
Metal Magic.
But again, you say, what's the original lineup of Pantera? Who's the Phil?
Yeah.
He's the singer. He's the first singer.
If it wasn't for the internet, the way the internet is today, a lot of people wouldn't even know about Metal Magic. I know they'd like to forget about it, I'm sure.
Or Projects in the Jungle.
But people like me won't let them forget. or Projects in the Jungle.
It reminds me of that saying, like if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
Doesn't make a noise. Yeah.
And you're right, Jim. It's like, say if you eliminate YouTube and Wikipedia and the internet,
yeah,
I think there's a lot of things that you wouldn't know about bands, or even like as far as lineup changes, that you just never know about.
Yeah.
And the whole scheme of a band's rock and roll history,
yeah,
you wouldn't know either way.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different paths you could head down talking about this, even from people who were on recordings that didn't make it into the videos, or didn't go out on tour. You have studio musicians. Look at the studio musicians of the '60s and the '70s. How many the Wrecking Crew, how many albums they put out. They didn't get credit listings for being into any of those bands, but yet they
and those are the songs you're listening to,
and they are the musicians of the songs that you're listening to.
There's the punk rock band, the Bad Brains.
Yes.
And they have an album called Quickness. And on the album cover is the band.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, okay, great.
Yep.
But then, like, you flip it on the back side, and then, like, in small letters, it's like, okay, all the drums is by Mackie, the guy who was from the Cro-Mags.
Yeah.
But it's weird because you're like, yeah, but this is the lineup, though, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes the rock and roll bands are cheating. Lineups.
Oh yeah, sometimes they totally BS it. On a small scale, one of the early bands that I was in, they had just got done recording the album. They had everything down to 2-track, being mastered, and they have a falling out with the rhythm guitar player in the band.
Yeah.
They asked me to join the band. I joined the band. I got credit listing on that album, or cassette, I should say, for 0 tracks. I did not record a single track on that, but yet I was listed as the rhythm guitarist in the band.
Or is it all just come down to rock and roll mythology? Is it all mythology?
I think a lot of it is.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about formative years and key band members kind of plays into that.
Yeah.
Because a certain mythology is formed about a band based on the sum of the parts of those band members being together.
So ultimately the answer to the question is, it doesn't fucking matter.